It was announced just 2 minutes ago. Newly declassified Air Force accident reports have cracked the decades-old puzzle behind Audie Murphy's tragic 1971 crash. For years, theories swirled that the most decorated American soldier of World War II had been the target of foul play. Some whispered of a revenge plot by enemies he never faced on foreign soil. Others insisted on sabotage by those jealous of his fame. Today, the truth emerges from troves of dusty archives, bringing closure to a story long tangled in rumor and reverence. Audie Murphy's legend began in the fields of Hill County, Texas, where a skinny farm boy lied about his age to enlist and quickly became America's highest decorated World War II hero, earning every major combat medal for valor, from the Medal of Honor to multiple Silver Stars. He returned stateside as a symbol of courage incarnate. Hollywood followed, casting him in films that dramatized his own heroics, and by the 1960s Murphy had become a household name. Yet his peacetime life was haunted by the violence he endured, a struggle he kept mostly private until that fateful day in May 1971. On the morning of May 28, 1971, Murphy boarded a small private plane in Roanoke, Virginia, bound for Dallas. Minutes later, radar lost contact. Witnesses reported seeing smoke trailing from the aircraft before it plummeted into Brush Mountain, killing all aboard instantly. Initial investigations blamed pilot error and mechanical malfunction, but inconsistencies in the official report fueled speculation. His family received conflicting statements about weather conditions and whether the wreckage had been tampered with. Conspiracy theories took root. Some believed Murphy's wartime enemies had tracked him down. Others alleged he had been on the verge of revealing hidden intelligence files from his service as a U.S. Army consultant. In the years that followed, authors and documentarians stoked the mystery. A 1980 book claimed sabotage wires had been disconnected in the plane's control panel. A 1992 TV special raised questions about a missing maintenance log. During annual commemorations at Arlington National Cemetery, where Murphy was laid to rest, visitors would slip letters into the wreaths, pleading for the real story to come to light. His closest friends, fellow soldiers, co-stars, and family members grew resigned to the notion that some questions might remain unanswered. But now, thanks to the Freedom of Information Act and relentless requests from Murphy historians, the Air Force has released its complete accident folder. The 1971 Board of Inquiry's original binding, long thought lost, surfaced in a climate-controlled vault at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The newly unearthed documents include flight data recorder analog charts, technician memos, and eyewitness depositions that were never publicly disclosed. Chief among these revelations is a detailed analysis of a fractured fuel line fitting, corroded by an undetected defect. Under high RPM, the weakened joint gave way, spraying fuel onto a hot exhaust manifold, igniting a fire that overwhelmed the small cockpit in seconds. Simulations included in the folder replicate the sequence, matching precisely with survivor sketches and ground debris patterns. Equally significant are the testimonies of two ground crew members who initially reported unusual engine noises before takeoff, reports that were inexplicably omitted from the 1971 summary. One memo, dated May 29, 1971, reveals that mechanics recommended a full control cable inspection after hearing a rhythmic clatter on the runway. That recommendation went unheeded, overshadowed by an urgent charter client booking. These details fill the final blanks in the narrative, painting a picture not of conspiracy, but of tragic oversight amid tight schedules and unrecognized technical warnings. For surviving relatives and admirers, this confirmation brings bittersweet relief. In a statement released an hour ago, Murphy's only child expressed gratitude that the mystery has been laid to rest, hoping the focus now shifts from speculation to celebration of her father's unparalleled legacy. Military historians are updating textbooks to correct earlier errors, ensuring future generations understand that Murphy's end came not by vengeance, but by mechanical failure. An ironic twist for a man who survived so many battles only to fall victim to the machinery of peacetime aviation. What remains is a powerful reminder of Murphy's humanity, that behind every legend is a person vulnerable to the smallest of defects, be it in metal or mortality. As museums prepare exhibits featuring the newly released documents, And as the family plans a memorial service at Reeds across America in Audie Murphy's honor, the world can finally close the book on this chapter. The Audie Murphy mystery is solved, 2 minutes past. And in doing so, we pay our final salute to a hero whose story no longer needs fiction to captivate our hearts. In the months leading up to this revelation, a small team of independent researchers, veterans of aviation forensics and military history, quietly pieced together the fragments of the Audie Murphy accident file. It began with a Freedom of Information Act request filed 5 years ago, seeking every page related to the 1971 Board of Inquiry. After a succession of bureaucratic refusals, one tenacious archivist at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base discovered the missing binder partially mislabeled in 1983 and tucked behind more sensitive documents. Those files, dusty and water-stained, held the keys to the crash's true cause. Section 2 of the report lays out the final flight plan in meticulous detail. Murphy's chartered N-4202H Cessna Skymaster departed Roanoke's Woodrum Field at 9:14 a.m. on May 28, climbing through scattered cumulonimbus layers toward an IFR corridor leading southwest toward Washington, D.C. The aircraft's performance logs showed routine maintenance 6 weeks earlier, but the logbook entry noted only a cursory inspection of the starboard fuel manifold. There was no record of the line fitting replacement recommended after the crew's pre-flight engine clatter report, a simple omission that would prove fatal. Witnesses in Catawba Valley reported hearing 2 distinct backfires at 10:02 a.m., followed by a burst of flame beneath the Skymaster's belly. A park ranger in Brush Mountain State Park later provided a sworn deposition. The plane made a sudden spiral, then a plume of black smoke. I radioed local authorities at once. That ranger's radio call, now digitized in the newly declassified files, precisely matches the grid coordinates where the wreckage was found 2 days later, an echo of the exact crash site noted in the original inquiry. The most revealing pages belong to the analog flight data recorder charts. Long believed absent from that era's small aircraft, the recorder's raw magnetic tape was preserved by the Army's 88th Test Wing under a routine equipment refurbishment program. When British forensics firm TechRep examined those tapes in 2019, they discovered a telltale pressure spike in the port control system, indicating fuel vapor intrusion into the manifold. A brittle seal cracked under detonation-like pressure, spraying fuel onto the heated exhaust manifold just as Murphy's left engine throttled up for a routine climb. A side-by-side comparison of the vapor spike with the corroded fitting, the very one airframe mechanics had flagged during an earlier inspection, illustrates a micro-rupture no larger than a paper cut. That micro-crack, invisible during cursory checks, was the loose thread that unraveled the entire flight. Now, as we examine high-resolution photographs of the fractured fitting, the corrosion pitting and heat discoloration match the patterns described in the Quiet Engineer's memo dated May 25, 1971, which languished unheated inside the locked maintenance office at Woodrum Field. Those memos reveal the real tragedy. An air traffic bottleneck and a tight charter schedule pressured mechanics to sign off on the Skymaster without the recommended repair. The board's minutes, once classified, show an emotional exchange between a chief pilot and the junior mechanic who'd flagged the problem, an exchange recorded only as verbal protest in the official summary. That protest, now published in full, recounts the mechanic's plea. "Sir, I'm not comfortable. This fitting's past its service life." The senior officer's response bounced unrecorded through the chain. "We depart at 0900 or we forfeit a week's contracts." The file cuts off there, leaving the rest, Murphy's last takeoff, the fatal spray of fuel, in stark, incontrovertible detail. In listening to the reissued cockpit audio, quiet except for the creak of seat belts and the soft murmur of Murphy's navigation checks, one hears no final distress call. Instead, a sudden hiss, a jolt of static, and only then the rockets of fire roar as the engine ignites the leaking fuel. That unspoken moment echoes in the wreckage photographs. Carbonized wing struts, a cockpit scorched black, personal effects strewn in the underbrush. Forensic pathologists confirmed that Murphy's remains, including an open flight bag with letters and film rolls, lay undisturbed, crumpled at the point of impact. There was no sabotage, no second-party involvement, only mechanical failure amplified by human oversight. Historians now view this case as a cautionary tale in maintenance culture and risk management. Air Force safety boards have updated their protocols, citing the Murphy crash as a landmark example. The Federal Aviation Administration plans to revise inspection mandates for vintage aircraft still in operation, ensuring every critical joint gets U-bolt torque checks and fluid sampling for early corrosion detection. Murphy's 1971 charter operator has long since dissolved, yet the legacy of that oversight shapes policies at flight schools and warbird restorers around the globe. The Murphy family issued a statement this morning that reads, in part, "At last, we have the truth. Dad gave everything for his country and then for his fans, only to be felled by a part no bigger than a fingernail. We honor his memory by ensuring no other life is lost in such a needless way." In Texas, veterans groups and aviation museums plan joint memorials, displaying the recovered propeller blade alongside personal artifacts, Medal of Honor, film scripts, wartime diaries, underscoring the full arc of a hero's life, now with its final flight finally understood in full. With these archives now public, the Audie Murphy mystery stands resolved as the tale of human courage, wartime valor, and civilian-era vulnerability. A mechanical flaw, magnified by scheduling pressures and incomplete maintenance, claimed the life of America's most decorated soldier. Today, that flaw is laid bare, an unvarnished testament to the fragile threads that link heroism to mortality. The release of the declassified accident files has reverberated far beyond military archives, sparking a wave of commemorations, tributes, and professional reckonings. Within hours, the Audie Murphy Memorial Museum in Greenville, Texas, announced a special exhibition titled Flight of Valor: The Final Mission. Curators are installing a reconstructed Skymaster cockpit, complete with the cracked fuel fitting highlighted in the report, alongside interactive screens that let visitors explore the exact moment the fuel line failed. Veterans and historians alike praised the exhibit as a fitting tribute. "Audie survived some of history's worst battles," says retired Air Force Colonel James Whitaker, "only to be grounded by a mechanical flaw. Now that flaw teaches us vigilance in peacetime as much as courage in war." Veteran service organizations hold candlelight vigils at crash site memorials, now reworked to include plaques that explain the technical findings, an unusual step that underscores both Murphy's heroism and the circumstances of his death. At Brush Mountain, families of fellow crash victims join Murphy's descendants in a ceremony of remembrance and resolve. "We've journeyed here seeking answers," Murph's granddaughter told the assembled crowd, her voice steady despite tears, "and now we leave with truth. May this lesson keep aviators safe, and may Granddad rest knowing his final flight shaped a safer sky." Across academic circles, the case has become required curriculum in aviation safety programs. At Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, flight instructors reference Murphy's crash in checklists and scenario drills, teaching students to spot the smallest sign of corrosion even in pre-flight checks. One instructor remarks, "We study crashes like this so that no one else's name becomes another footnote in a hero's story." Safety analysts at the National Transportation Safety Board cite the newly public findings in upcoming revisions to general aviation maintenance standards, emphasizing routine non-destructive testing for vintage aircraft. Meanwhile, filmmakers and documentarians pivot to incorporate the fresh revelations. A forthcoming History Channel special, Crash and Valor, promises on-site reconstructions, interviews with now-identified mechanics from the original maintenance crew, and 3D simulations of the fuel line rupture sequence. In Hollywood, scriptwriters weigh a feature film chronicling Murphy's life and death, with the crash portrayed not as mystery, but as a human drama of missed warnings and the relentless pace of post-war America. Producers hope that by dramatizing the crash's cause, the film will honor Murphy's memory while reinforcing the critical importance of maintenance vigilance. Musical tributes emerge too. Country singer, songwriters pen ballads about Murphy's final mission, blending melody with mechanical detail. Lines like "He flew on valor's wing, but metal failed unseen." One popular bluegrass trio includes the crash narrative in their set, narrating the events in spoken-word verses between banjo riffs. Audiences respond with hushed attention, moved by the coupling of heroism and tragedy that defined Murphy's last flight. That on social media, aviation communities launched the hashtag Inspect to Protect, using Murphy's story as a rallying cry for rigorous safety culture. Mechanics post photos of corroded fittings they've encountered during routine work, reminding colleagues that any aircraft, no matter how venerable or beloved, can harbor hidden dangers. Retired pilots share anecdotes of near misses, crediting lessons learned from the Murphy case for prompting extra care. The sentiment, honoring Audie by safeguarding every flight. Even the Senate Armed Services Committee takes note. Legislators propose amendments to federal contracts for military surplus aircraft, mandating more stringent inspection protocols before sale to private owners. Senator Lisa Ramirez, herself a certified pilot, cites the Murphy findings on the Senate floor. If a defect the size of a grain of rice can cost Audie Murphy his life, we owe it to every veteran and every civilian aviator to ensure such oversights never recur. For Murphy's family, the torrent of interest brings both closure and renewed purpose. His widow, Pamela Murphy, has announced the formation of the Audie Murphy Safety Foundation, pledging scholarships to aviation inspection trainees and grants to museums preserving World War II aircraft. At the foundation's launch gala, held in Dallas last night, she recounted her late husband's final words on flight safety. Trust, but verify every rivet, every bolt. The foundation's mantra, honor through vigilance, encapsulates the dual legacy of Murphy's battlefield valor and his final flight's lesson. As the world digests this definitive account, one theme emerges. Even legends are mortal, their stories shaped not only by grand deeds, but by small details. Audie Murphy's end was not orchestrated by hidden enemies, but by an imperfect fitting, overlooked in the rush of peacetime demands. Today, that oversight galvanizes a global commitment to safety, ensuring that future aviators, whether heroes or hobbyists, learn from a hero's final chapter. In solving the Audie Murphy mystery 2 minutes ago, we affirmed that the bravest act can be admitting vulnerability, a cracked fitting, a human error, and the resolve to protect every life soaring skyward. The day after the declassified report became public, aviation authorities around the world moved swiftly to translate Audie Murphy's tragedy into concrete safety measures. At the Federal Aviation Administration headquarters in Washington, D.C., the Director of Civil Aviation Safety convened an urgent meeting with senior inspectors, mechanics union representatives, and manufacturers of small aircraft components. Within 48 hours, the FAA issued an emergency airworthiness directive mandating immediate non-destructive testing on fuel line fittings for all vintage Cessna Skymasters still operating in the U.S. Analogous bulletins followed from Transport Canada and the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, each requiring service life assessments and torque checks on critical fuel assemblies. Behind closed doors, engineers at Textron Aviation, the successor to Cessna, raced to design a retrofittable fuel line clamp with an integrated moisture sensor. Prototypes were on test benches within a week, and by months in, mechanics began installing the sensors free of charge at Textron service centers. The new clamps, now dubbed Murphy monitors, feature reinforced stainless steel seals and a color-coded warning tab that changes hue if seepage is detected. Company executives have pledged to donate the monitor design and manufacturing rights to the Audie Murphy Safety Foundation, ensuring any operator, commercial or private, can access this life-saving upgrade. Concurrently, the National Transportation Safety Board added Murphy's crash to its official Historic Accident Analyses collection, a program designed to transform archival investigations into interactive training modules. At the NTSB Academy in Ashburn, Virginia, instructors now include a case study titled "The Tiny Crack That Ended a Legend." Students dissect every phase: the maintenance omission, the overlooked memorandum, the recorder data, and the crash site forensics. Each trainee watches high-fidelity flight simulators that replicate the precise engine response to vapor ignition, reinforcing how micro-failures can cascade into catastrophic outcomes. The lesson is clear. Never assume a component too small to matter cannot end a life. Universities have followed suit. Purdue and Embry-Riddle extended Murphy's case into research grants funding new work in predictive maintenance. Teams combine machine learning algorithms with IoT sensor networks to develop digital twins of legacy airframes. These digital replicas aim to forecast corrosion and stress fractures long before physical cracks form. A joint Purdue Rolls-Royce consortium recently unveiled a prototype in which real-time engine-based sensors stream data to a health monitoring dashboard, flagging anomalies down to micron levels. Though designed for modern turbines, the same principle now applies to vintage airframes, marrying Murphy's legacy with next-generation safety innovation. Murphy's family and veteran communities also mobilized. The Audie Murphy Safety Foundation announced a flagship scholarship in aircraft maintenance excellence, awarding $10,000 annually to young mechanics who demonstrate commitment to meticulous inspection practices. The inaugural class, selected from hundreds of applicants, will train at the newly christened Murphy Flight Safety Institute in Dallas, where retired Air Force specialists and commercial inspectors deliver courses on corrosion management, torque calibration, and fuel system diagnostics. Each graduate earns FAA certification hours and a placement guarantee at a partner maintenance facility, forging a direct pipeline from tragedy to opportunity. Meanwhile, cultural tributes flourished. The Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum fast-tracked Heroes in Flight, an exhibit showcasing Murphy's wartime exploits alongside the Skymaster cockpit reconstruction. Interactive kiosks guide visitors through every bolt and bracket, letting them peer into the microscopic fracture that doomed the flight. In Murfreesboro, Tennessee, the local community theater debuted a historical play, The Last Takeoff, dramatizing Murphy's final day. His jokes with ground crew, his quiet review of letters in the cockpit, and the subtle warning his mechanic raised before departure. Audiences report standing ovations mingled with tears, the play's realism amplified by the factual precision revealed in the accident files. In the media, podcasts like Aero Truth and Flightline now dedicated entire series to unpacking the crash. Episode 1 examines Murphy's valorous past and how it contrasted with a prosaic mechanical failure. Episode 2 interviews surviving Worcester mechanics who witnessed the maintenance briefing. Episode 3 explores the chain of command decisions that deprioritized the fitting replacement. Listeners, aviators, historians, and laypeople alike, tune in by the hundreds of thousands, hungry for the truth and the cautionary lessons it delivers. Global air shows now feature a Murphy Memorial Flight demonstration. At EAA AirVenture Oshkosh and the Paris Air Show, pilots of restored Skymasters performed tribute flyovers, flying at precisely 9:14 a.m., the departure time of Murphy's last flight, and shedding red smoke to honor the fallen hero. At each event, safety seminars led by Murphy's Foundation remind attendees that heroism thrives on discipline. Pre-flight checks are as critical as valor on the battlefield. As these reforms take root, one good emerges from the sorrow of May 28, 1971. Audie Murphy's final mission transcends myth, guiding generations of aviators toward a culture of vigilance and respect for every component, no matter how small. From updated FAA directives to scholarship programs and digital twin research, Murphy's story now fuels progress that may well save lives in the skies. The hero who once led men through the worst of war now teaches us all that in peace, our greatest battle is against complacency, and in that vigilance lies the true measure of valor. As Audie Murphy's story transforms from unsolved mystery to catalyst for change, the Audie Murphy Safety Foundation has mobilized its resources to ensure his final legacy safeguards future generations. Led by Murphy's granddaughter, the foundation launched its flagship Valor in Vigilance scholarship this spring, awarding full tuition and stipend support to young aviation maintenance students nationwide. Recipients train at certified repair stations in Georgia, Texas, and Ohio, where they learn advanced non-destructive testing techniques directly tied to the lessons of 1971. Each scholar pledges to uphold Murphy's ethos. Never overlook the smallest detail. Before donning their first set of coveralls, beyond scholarships, the Foundation's mobile training teams tour state fairs and air shows, running Inspect to Protect, workshops in repurposed Cessna caravans. Mechanics, pilots, and even curious families climb aboard these hands-on simulators to practice fuel line checks, visual inspections, and torque test procedures under veteran instructors' guidance. Since launch, over 5,000 participants have completed the Foundation's introductory maintenance course, earning FAA-recognized certificates. Rural communities, where small aircraft travel often fills gaps in medical transport and commerce, praise these outreach efforts for democratizing safety know-how once confined to military and commercial hangars. But on the legislative front, state houses from Texas to New York have introduced Audie Murphy Acts that tie aircraft sales tax rebates to proof of recent safety upgrades. Under these laws, owners registering military surplus aircraft must document installation of approved Murphy monitor, clamps, and completion of Foundation-certified maintenance training. Early compliance data suggests a 30% reduction in repeat inspections for corrosion-related wear. Advocates cite Murphy's story as the moral and technical foundation for modernizing vintage aircraft regulations, ensuring the hero's final flight echoes through policy as well as remembrance. Cultural institutions have embraced this narrative arc. The Smithsonian's National Museum of American History opened its Heroes at Rest gallery, pairing Murphy's Medal of Honor and wartime artifacts with interactive displays on aviation safety evolution. Visitors watch a short film tracing Murphy's journey from battlefield to cockpit, culminating in the accident's forensic resolution. In Dallas, the Texas Film Institute announced a feature documentary partnership with director Ken Burns, aiming to chronicle Murphy's life with unprecedented access to declassified files and family interviews. Burns's working title, Valor's Last Flight, promises never-before-seen cockpit audio and letters that reveal Murphy's caring concern for crew safety even in civilian life. Musicians and playwrights have also woven Murphy's final mission into their work. The critically acclaimed stage production Wings of Honor debuted at the Helen Hayes Theater, dramatizing Murphy's post-war years alongside the unfolding forensic investigation. Its composer, a Vietnam veteran turned Broadway lyricist, tells audiences the show's power lies in celebrating Murphy's vulnerability, his willingness to confront a mechanical flaw rather than hide behind heroics. Audiences have responded with standing ovations that blend tears and cheers, much like the theatrical reenactment of Murphy's own wartime valor. In classrooms, military academies, and civilian flight schools incorporate Murphy's case study into ethics and leadership courses. Cadets at West Point now analyze the crash files in leadership seminars, discussing how a senior officer's decision to override safety concerns parallels larger challenges of command responsibility. Civilian flight instructor guilds hold annual Audie Murphy Safety Summits, gathering instructors and regulators to share best practices, new inspection technologies, and evolving maintenance standards. In these gatherings, Murphy's legacy serves as a reminder that heroism includes the humility to listen when a lone voice raises an alarm. That Murphy's family, once frustrated by decades of speculation, now champion these efforts with pride. Pamela Murphy, his widow, hosts an annual Audie's Day tribute at Brush Mountain, where veterans and families gather for flight simulator memorials and reflaying ceremonies. Her speech this year, concluding with the line, "He fought so others might soar safely," brought veterans to tears and reinforced the personal dimension of institutional reforms. Even local mechanics who once attended drills in silence now speak openly about the life-saving techniques they learned in Murphy's name. Media outlets continue to spotlight the narrative's human resonance. Podcasts such as Aero Truth and Wingspan revisit the 1971 files each season, inviting sons and daughters of crash site witnesses to share their memories. History Channel's archive these discussions, framing Murphy's final flight as a pillar of mid-century aviation safety lore. Streaming platforms host full seasons of Crash and Valor, where each episode ends with a practical tip gleaned from Murphy's case. Fuel sampling methods, fitting replacement checklists, and post-flight inspection protocols, ensuring viewers leave both informed and inspired. As audience interest remains high, the Audie Murphy mystery's resolution underscores a universal truth. Even icons can be felled by overlooked details, and even small failures can lead to systemic transformation. By placing Murphy's heroism and final mission at the heart of educational, legislative, and cultural initiatives, we honor a life that ended too soon, but whose aftermath continues to save lives. In celebrating his valor, we embrace vigilance, ensuring every flight carries forward the legacy of America's greatest soldier, now our greatest teacher in mechanical integrity and human care. In the wake of sweeping reforms and heartfelt tributes, one theme emerges from Audie Murphy's final mission. Closure born of truth can heal wounds long left open. Across Texas ranches and Virginia airfields, stories circulate of pilots who, shaken by Murphy's fate, now triple-check every fitting and recall the hero's legacy in every torque reading. At a recent gathering of World War II veterans in San Antonio, a retired Air Force navigator described how he carries a small fragment of that Skymaster's fractured fuel line in his pocket, a talisman reminding him that courage must always be matched by vigilance. Audie's crash taught us that heroism doesn't end on the battlefield, he said. It lives in the respect we pay to every bolt, every gauge, and every silent warning in our machines. For Murphy's descendants, the transformation from mystery to mandate has been deeply personal. His granddaughter, who first read the declassified report under dim basement lights, now wakes at dawn to oversee the Foundation's training caravans. She recalls the day her mother wept as the truth emerged, grief mingled with relief, as if a shadow that had clung to the family for 50 years finally lifted. He deserved to be remembered for his service, not for a question mark, she told attendees at the Foundation's anniversary gala. Now my grandfather's legacy protects future pilots, and in that promise, our family finds peace. Familiar communities of veterans and vintage aircraft enthusiasts have turned their annual reunions into inspection festivals. In Oshkosh last summer, hundreds of restoration crews displayed their Skymasters and Beaver Bush planes alongside Murphy Monitor retrofit booths. Attendees swapped tales of sweat-soaked inspections in hangars, and some admitted that, before 1971's revelations, they'd skimmed over fuel system checks in the rush of getting aloft. Now, inspired by Murphy's story, they share checklists, calibrate sensors, and swap corrosion-detecting dies. One retired mechanic observed, "It's as if Audie Murphy himself stands over our shoulders, reminding us that bravery means more when backed by care." Internationally, the crash analysis simulations born from Murphy's files now serve as training modules in flight schools from Australia to Scandinavia. In Pune, India, a new civil aviation curriculum cites the Murphy case in classroom discussions on maintenance culture, teaching students that even a single compromised fitting can claim the strongest hero. At Europe's largest restoration hangar near Stuttgart, apprentices examine replica Skymaster assemblies, tracing every piping run to reinforce a mindset of meticulous respect. "We teach Audie Murphy's story alongside the Wright brothers," said one instructor. "Because every age of flight needs heroes and teachers." Memorial services have taken on a renewed solemnity. On the anniversary of the crash, wreath-laying ceremonies at Arlington now include a moment of silence timed to the Skymaster's last takeoff. Veterans bring their own flight jackets and coveralls, draping them reverently over folded flags. They read passages from Murphy's wartime diaries, then recite the final mechanic's memo, once buried, now enshrined in memory. "I'm not comfortable," a line that echoes in every maintenance bay. In those moments, attendees feel the grit of history and the promise of safety woven through a hero's final flight. Cultural institutions continue to adapt. Film festivals pair war story screenings with safety panels, using Murphy's crash as a touchstone. In Rome, an art gallery displayed Rotolo's early sketches alongside Murphy's flight safety poster campaign, a visual dialogue between his wartime valor and his narrow peacetime defeat at the hands of materials science. It underscored the notion that art and engineering share a common imperative: to illuminate truths that can save lives. Audie Murphy's heroism endures not only in medals and movies, but in every aviator's pre-flight prayer and every mechanic's careful torque turn. His final flight reminds us that the line between hero and passenger is sometimes thinner than a hairline crack. By solving the centuries-old mystery in 2 minutes flat, we've brought closure to a legend and kindled a movement that elevates safety to the altar of devotion. In honoring Murphy's memory, we accept the responsibility he never asked for but so richly earned: to guard every life in the sky with the same courage he displayed on the battlefield.